Let's turn this.
Okay, I'll do that.
So that's who I was with.
Oh, yeah.
She's doing good for 90 something.
Yeah.
She was lucid.
Nice to have her
Yeah,
out there.
it was tickled. We made her laugh a lot.
I bet. Try to get more.
I guess it's not 6. I thought it was.
Close.
Yeah. Just
Everybody, we'll call this meeting of the Delta Township Board to order. Will board members and guests please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Treasurer Beataway,
present.
trustee Bowen,
Present.
trustee Brewer, trustee Cascarella,
Present.
trustee Monica, clerk is present, supervisor Fletcher,
Here.
you have quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. A motion to excuse trustees Mohica and Brewer would be in order.
So moved. Support.
Been moved and supported to excuse trustees Mohica and Brewer. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. We have a special presentation this evening from the Lansing Board of Water and Light. We have the CEO, Dick Peffley, and some of his colleagues from the board here this evening. So I invite you all up to the podium, and we appreciate you being here this evening.
Good evening, Dick Peffley. Is it okay to talk with us down?
Sure.
It's a pleasure to be here, and I brought Lori Matt, our subject matter expert on what's going on at Erickson Station. I know there was a news article. I can assure you that no one is more sensitive about water protection in the Board of Water and Light, and that we have been working on a plan out there. And even though the news story was only picked up by one mainstream media, which did a good job explaining it, it left a lot of what ifs and as's and maybes in there that concern some residents. And we worked with the township to field any calls directly to us, and unless it's changed in the last few days, we had 11 people inquire of what was going on, and Lori was or Angie sitting back there responded to all of them that we could get a hold of, so they can give you an update. But Lori can give you the Reader's Digest version of what we've been doing out there for about 10 years, and we'll be happy to field any questions on that. So I'm going to allow her to step up.
Great.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm gonna keep my notes up here so I stay on task. As Mr. Peffley mentioned, our Erickson Station has been in the news recently. And really our coal combustion residual, or you'll hear CCR a lot. It's been in the news all over the nation. Our impoundments have been concerned. We are subject to both state and federal regulations for those impoundments, and we've been complying with both requirements. They're similar rules, but they're not the same. So we have kind of two separate paths. Groundwater monitoring is a big one of those paths, and that's what we've been working on the last couple of years. And that's really what sparked this media interest. First and foremost, we want everyone to know the Board of Water and Light's water supply is safe. It is not impacted by any of the contamination found on site at Erickson Station. And we know that because the board's municipal wells that are in the area about a mile away have not been used in a little over 10 years, and we have no plan to use those. So that's the good news. As Mr. Peffley mentioned, we have received to date about 11 inquiries. 7 of those calls came from people in Delta Township. Angie Goodman is our water quality administrator. She's called each one of them and explained the situation. All of the people that have called in are on the municipal water supply, so that we can confidently say that they're not impacted. So that was good news as well. Angie's also been working with Delta Township on determining if how many private wells are in the area. Good news there, most of the facilities and residents in the area of our Erickson station are on municipal water. So there's very few that are impacted. Normally, we wouldn't just start sampling private wells. The process is you figure out where the contamination is on your site first before you expand your groundwater monitoring program beyond that. But out of abundance of caution, we did select 6 private wells to sample that are in about a 3/4 of a mile away from the site and in the general down gradient direction of where the groundwater flow is, which is about northeast. One of those wells is about 1/2 mile away. It's a commercial establishment, and it's almost directly northeast of the facility. And then the other 5 are residential private wells. They're northeast of the facility. We also have our own monitoring wells on that northeast location nearest to the impoundments. We're not seeing any contaminants of concern at those locations, so we feel it's pretty unlikely that those residents would be impacted. We're hoping to have results. We sampled on Thursday, February 3rd. We're hoping to have results in about a week, and then we'll be able to share them with you, and we'll share them with the residents as well. We used an independent sampler. We used an independent lab. And so again, hopefully in the next week or so, we'll have more information. We're continuing to work closely with EPA in the state. We've been very cooperative. We'll continue to be cooperative. The CCR regulations are quite complicated, and it's the groundwater monitoring in particular is a pretty lengthy process. It's very much data driven. So you sample, you evaluate results. Sometimes you resample, you try to fill in gaps when there are gaps. That requires additional monitors to be installed. It requires remodeling. And so we're just right in the midst of that process. But, thus far things are going pretty well and as expected. So that's really all I have. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, yeah, Mr. Peffley reminded me, we don't have any outstanding violations at this time. The paper kind of indicated that we had received violations, and that's just not true.
Yeah, well, thank you for the Cliff's Notes version of that. I did read the article, and I determined that basically, it's still in the discovery stage, and it's quite a lengthy process, and it is data driven. And, it's not just, contaminants, but, it's migration and what, depth it is. Is it going to interfere with, an aquifer or not? Is it going to interfere with surface water? So I understand it's going to be a while before that to determine if and how much contamination there is, and if it's migrating and at what rate, and what area it entails. And then at that point, I guess, there's some determination whether there's a remediation requirement or not. So given all that, I was just curious because I know there's a lot of interest in it and all that, and it does take a while to get the data and do the analysis with the multiple agencies involved. But your best guess is when you will see sort of a good, clear picture of really what the status is of that would be when?
So some of the data that we're showing so far, the levels are a lot better than what I would expect for a facility that's been a coal-fired power plant since 1970. So, I've been pleased with that. We have 10 wells. Currently, we're installing 4 more this week. And that's because some of the wells, the data just, there were some gaps, things didn't look right. So we're installing more wells. You have to do about 8 rounds of sampling in order to really have a good statistical analysis to see if you're above those background values that we've already calculated. So we'll get those wells in, we'll have 8 rounds, we'll be able to refine our models, and that will give us really a better idea of what the appropriate remedial action will be.
Right.
We have already submitted preliminary plans to the state listing various options. And again, natural attenuation is one where, the concentrations are pretty low. We don't like to say dilution is the solution, but, it kind of is when you're talking about groundwater. When you have much higher values, then you have to take a much more of an aggressive approach. That could be, installing a slurry wall around the site. So you're sort of creating this bathtub and then you can, pump and treat. So there's a lot of different options that we're looking at, and a lot of it just depends on really the extent of what we're looking at. So.
And just a follow-up question, if I may. So it wasn't clear to me, you have these coal ash deposits, and I don't know if they're all surface deposits or some of them are buried. And I think the cooling ponds, correct me if I'm wrong, are actually coal ash, or is that just dirt?
No, they're all surface impoundments. Nothing's buried. We had, historically, we had a 33-acre impoundment where we put both our fly ash and our bottom ash. In 1976, we converted our fly ash to a dry system. So only from that point till about 2014, we cleaned out that 33-acre impoundment and we put in a smaller system. It's about 5 acres because most of the ash we're sending out offsite to a landfill. So we have a much better situation that we're dealing with. We'll be cleaning them out. We're required by regulation to have them all cleaned out, which means even sampling showing that they're clean by October of 2023.
So my final question then, cleaned out, but is there any intention of actually removing and disposing of it in any way?
Yep,
So it's actually
absolutely.
not on site
Yep,
anymore?
we're going to completely remove it from site and we'll have to do some sampling to prove that it's off site.
Sure. Is that same 2023 or is that beyond?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, that's pretty aggressive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to put a final note on it is that we've closed 2 other facilities similar to this, Lake Lansing. We did a closure there where we did a cap and a slurry wall around it, met all Eagle and EPA requirements. And then we did one over off Sunset, and we removed there, and that's considered the gold standard. When you just remove all of it, that's what we've already done at Erickson Station, but a little is leached back in. So we'll be removing that also at as we start to do closure. I can tell you that Erickson has an operating permit until the end of 2025. We were going to close it into 23. But with the announcement of and the work we've done with Jim Altman and future things coming our way, we're going, as soon as we can burn the coal down at that in the next 6 to 7 months, we're going to close that plant and have plans to, we need to provide energy for some of these other businesses coming. We have to be clean energy. So Erickson at the latest will be closed at the end of December. We just don't want to close it with all the coal sitting underground, and we got to deal with that. So if we can burn it down, and we'll do that. And so we have petitioned to get a 3 or 4 month extension on what's the normal closure date, on a plan they're working on, which we expect to get. But at the worst case scenario, the end of this calendar year, we'll start some kind of plan for disassembling that facility.
Thank you.
Andrea.
Yeah, my questions were along the same line of Dennis's, so I think most of them were answered. I just don't know if I followed, fully on the timeline. And again, realizing you're doing some monitoring right now, collecting data to then determine what remediation may take place. But can you just kind of walk through that a little bit roughly, what timelines? And again, I realize I'm not trying to hold you to anything, but just understand a little better kind of the process likely going forward.
Yeah, so there's not a specific timeline. It's all just dependent on the data and the method that's used. So I think you were indicate with our Lake Lansing landfill project. I mean, we're still monitoring out there. We didn't remove the ash though. So that's something we'll monitor for years to come. It's more favorable when you can remove the ash. And so it's just, you're waiting for those concentrations to fall below certain levels. And then you show that you've properly cleaned it up. So a lot of it's really just dependent on the type of cleanup that will be, or the type of remedy that will be required.
Well, that's what I'm trying to understand. So if you're installing some additional wells to be able to monitor, is that something by summer you'll have enough data to then determine kind of where you're going? And then I guess I'm just trying to get a little more clarity on what the timeline, and I don't mean it again to hold in stone, what you say. It's just more to kind of have a rough idea of the next steps, the next phases where you might be?
Sure, yeah, we try to sample about every 5 or 6 weeks, and we need 8 rounds before we can, receive the data. So you're probably looking about 8 months before we have a better handle. And then it depends on, we think we've got some good well placement. We think we have enough wells to really tell us a story, to make our model stronger. But, without actually seeing the data, it's hard. So, certainly there might be one well that something's just a little off again. And so you might have to do further analysis. But, I would say probably, within the next year, we should have a pretty good idea of the method we're going to select.
Okay, thank you for that
You're
clarification.
welcome. Other questions?
And meanwhile, if the plant closes in December of this year, then that will stop the source of the contamination.
Absolutely. Yep. Removing the source will stop. And so that will only benefit.
Thank you. That's what I thought.
100% of it was removed like 10 years ago, so only a little bit's gone back.
Right. Yeah. And as Mr. Peffley reminded me, I mean, we've removed the source already, the larger source. And so now there's just sort of this, de minimis amounts that have been collecting since 2015.
Great. Well, thank you. We really appreciate you guys being here tonight.
My pleasure.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have our agenda before us. Any additions or deletions? Not a motion to approve. Andrea,
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
is there support?
Support.
There is support. All those in favor of approving the agenda as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Public comments. Now is opportunity to speak. Anybody would like to speak this evening? Going up to the podium. State your name and address for the record.
My name is Alana Christ, 6221 Delta River Drive, Lansing, Michigan. I have a prepared statement that I timed out to about 5 minutes, so I don't know if you'll allow me to finish the statement or if you want me to break it up into part 1 and part 2 before and after to keep within the allotted time. Considering I'm the only public comment today, I would ask that the board just let me read my statement through.
Go ahead and read your statement.
Great, thank you. I don't come to you with any sort of light fare on this, but I have to make some comments about the vote last January 18th about Hawk Meadow Park. Dear Board of Trustees, I have thought about Hawk Meadow Park every day since the unjustified vote on January 18th to let an affiliate of Mr. Fletcher's to continue to extract private value out of our public conservation land. From that vote, I am deeply hurt and I am very angry. The haste of which this board used public legal counsel to change the Hawk Meadow Park deed to favor the affiliate of Mr. Fletcher is both unethical.
Excuse me,
and-
could you just explain why do you keep saying the affiliate of Mr. Fletcher?
Because I don't know your relationship with Mr. Lonier, except that you have one. So I don't know whether to call him your friend, acquaintance, a business partner.
Somebody who lives on Doe Pass in Delta Township.
And so you only know this person by his address and you've never spoken to him at all.
No, I've toured his farm before. and I
Okay,
know
so
who he
you've
is.
toured his farm. So is it fair to call him at very least an acquaintance, if not a friend?
An acquaintance, sure.
Great. So Mr. Fletcher's acquaintance, of which he got a personal tour of his farm. I usually don't let
It
acquaintances.
wasn't a personal tour. It was a tour that was conducted on a regional basis of a lot of leaders that were
Great.
there from the Tri-County Regional Planning
Great.
Commission.
I am sorry, Supervisor Fletcher. I am not meaning to offend you. It seems as though I have.
You have, because you repeatedly said that you keep referring to Mr. Longer as an affiliate, as if I somehow have an ownership in his farm, which I don't. I know who he is.
Is affiliate a problem? I'm sorry, did I say something wrong with by using the term affiliate? I was actually trying to use the most neutral term I could come up with.
Back and forth, you can have a response after.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sorry.
Okay.
You're clearly upset by this. I'm sorry that your knowledge of Mr. Lonier's existence is upsetting to you, but it is known to me that you clearly have an affiliation with Mr. Lonier. So that's why I used the term. It was not an accusatory nor a personal accusation. It was a general statement to not label your association with Mr. Lonier. May I continue? Great, thank you so much. As I was saying, across the street from Hawk Meadow Park, I manage Carl Hausman's legacy at the Capital City Bird Sanctuary. I have every bit of interest and stake in Hawk Meadow Park as Mr. Lonier or the descendants of Mr. Hausman. The idea that somehow Mr. Hausman forgot to allow farming during the complicated, deliberate, time-consuming deeding process is absurd. I have been offered no proof or legal precedent as to why this board changed Hawk Meadow Park's deed to favor industrial resource extraction and sanction environmental destruction, a practice that Mr. Lonier, by way of the industrial farming, is about to do for 10 consecutive years. Indeed, Mr. Lonier was the only qualified bidder in 2016 and again in 2021. Every day I look out my front window, I run, walk, bike, ski, or snowshoe, and think about those dead and barren fields. Before the board ignored a 4-2 Parks and Rec Commission vote to discontinue the leasing of land for industrial agriculture, I thought every day about building something beautiful for our community. Now, every single day, I'm thinking about what to do next. Instead of giving freely my expertise, network of organizations, scientific and educational connections, and the general Hawk Meadow Park community support, your Delta Way upheld a promise to nobody except for Mr. Lonier and cast me aside, despite the overwhelming value the merits of my hard work provided. Mr. Lonier stands to make upwards of somewhere of $200,000 or more after 10 years in commodity production by ladening our conservation park with pesticides, synthetic fertilizers, killing wildlife, degrading the soil, and polluting the water. Delta Township, in the meanwhile, after 10 years, will collect a grand total of $27,000. This is barely enough to cover 1 year of 2 trustees or Mr. Fletcher's salary, 1 year for 10 years of fee collection. I believe many members of this board had already cast their vote without a single thought to recognizing the valid and substantial evidence against another 5 years of environmental destruction on our public land. Now, on January 18th, trustees Cascarilla and trustee Fonda, who is not here today, they did uphold an honor they called the Delta Way, which is much appreciated. I think a code of honor is something a board should have. However, the problem is this Delta Way came many months too late, and it completely ignored the good faith process I engaged in June of 2021 when I contacted your head of Parks and Rec and engaged with the Park and Rec Commission that year. Why nobody responded to board comments questioning the practice of industrial agriculture in the November meeting? Why so few comments were made by the board on the investment in conservation? And why was I not asked questions? Furthermore, the idea that your public outreach as a classified ad in a local newspaper as a sufficient way of communication is ridiculous. This is not 1992, and in case of anyone's forgotten, the invention of the internet has rendered newspaper classified ads virtually obsolete. However, it does hide the fact that Mr. Lonier was given privileged access to the Hawk Meadow Park process, as were the descendants of Carl Hausman, yet I was not contacted until the majority voting minds were already made up. Like myself, Mr. Lonier did not reply to the ad. We both submitted bids by contacting the township directly. Therefore, claiming to uphold public promises may sound good in theory, but the problem is that this township's outreach had 0 bids from it, and so therefore 0 people replied to the ad. 0 people. The only promise being upheld was the one made to Mr. Lonier as a single individual and not our community at large. I'm on my final section. Why were the lack of bids not questioned? Why was the low amount of $2,700 per year not questioned? Why was the idea of shortening the lease not discussed in good faith? If the pickleball advocates can get $100,000 for their court, why did the board not even come and discuss with me during the process of deciding what to do with Hawk Meadow Park as its conservation deed stipulated? To conclude, I offered this board my energy and wealth of resources to create something beautiful for all to enjoy, a true community investment. I did this because I care more about our community and our environment than I do about my personal gain. The board dragged me through the bidding process in bad faith. That's how I feel. I no longer have confidence in this board to function on behalf of the people of Delta Township. I offered you a public asset for the good of all. You squandered it. Now I am here to state until things change and the Delta Way is aligned with the good of the people and true investment into community and our public lands, you can consider your actions as turning a public asset into now I'm forced to be a political adversary. As I gain support, I will not be acting alone. Instead of gathering people to create something beautiful, I will be gathering to dismantle this idle board, warm body coalition voters, and defunct Delta Way policies. The results can be a political reckoning. To conclude, your Delta Way turned an amazing public asset, one who came to you openly and in good faith, into an opposition that will root out bad ideas and sleepwalking board members content on selling out to the status quo. Thank you for your time.
Anybody else for public comment? Seeing no one. Oh, come on up, sir.
Well done. Well done.
Hi, Lyle Leatherbury, 533 Theo. I'm here just for a couple of minutes to my displeasure over the Eaton County Road Commission. I was out in southern Eaton County right after we had our snowstorm. The roads out there on this one Wolf Highway runs off in Bellevue Highway. 2 houses on the old road, and it's 3/4 of a mile long. Houndstooth clean. I left my house tonight on Theo Street. There's that much snow still on the street. I called the Eaton County Road Commission and they said, oh, they're out taking care of the winter job. I said, okay, no plow today. So I called the other neighbors and they said, is this the normal meeting? I said, normal meeting? The only thing normal about that meeting is one of the council members graduated from Normal University, Southern Illinois. No, excuse me, Northern Illinois is Normal Illinois. I said, that's the only thing normal. But you gotta tighten the heat down a little more on this road commission. They just aren't doing the job. I know, and I've been here before about the grifters, and you've kind of pardoned them because you use the term, they have the right to speak. Well, you know, I have some relation in Marshall. They got rid of theirs down there because they said it's not good for Marshall. They have these people and them people are on them street corners. They're duped. They're absolutely duping people. And you guys think it's okay. I don't know if you think it's okay, but let's just say when I was here before, I look at you guys as stewards for this township. And other than the clerk, the rest of you need to come to the party. You really do. And, you know, sorry to say, election time's running around. And I don't want to come back here and growl anymore at you guys. Please do your jobs, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience for public comment this evening? And no one else, will continue on with our agenda. Consent agenda, what's the pleasure of the board this evening?
I move the consent agenda as presented.
Is there support?
Support.
There is support. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll on approving the consent agenda?
Treasurer Fedewa?
Yes.
Trustee Bowen?
Was Cascarilla?
Oh, it was Andrea. Thank you. Trustee Cascarella?
Yes.
Trustee Bowen?
Yes.
Trustee Brewer? Trustee Mojica? Clerk Clark is yes. Supervisor Fletcher?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Old items of business, the 2022 Eaton County Road Millage Program. We had a presentation on that. They're looking for a motion to recommend our approval in adding a couple. Dennis.
I move that the Delta Township Board authorize the township manager and or the township engineer to advise the Eaton County Road Commission that the Delta Township takes no exception to the proposed 2022 millage programs projects as documented in the attached project map. I request the Eaton County Road Commission consider the 3 additional areas identified by Delta Township residents shown on the map by the Delta Township engineering staff when finalizing plans for the 2022 millage program projects or prioritize these areas in coming years.
Support.
There is support. Any discussion? Dennis.
Just a comment. I'm not really sure what 3 projects you were alluding to, but I was pleased to see that Westshire Street Canal to M43, that curb commercial was included. It's going to be a cobblestone street this spring if nothing was done to it. So I appreciate staff taking that to the road commission.
Just for clarification,
the pink, the three pink boxes on the map, Shenandoah subdivision, Clark Road, from Willow to Saginaw, and the Westbrook subdivision are the three that we've heard from board members and public alike. So that's the three that we're asking to take a look at.
Andrea.
I just want to comment. I know I've raised concerns about one of those being included. So Ernie, I really appreciate you highlighting those concerns that we've been hearing from residents in the community.
And I can't say I did ask for some feedback on Clark Road specifically from Blair, and he did get back to me. And I mean, his basic response is that there's just more miles of road in that shape or worse than they have the budget to do in any one year. And so that the projects that they've selected are kind of consistent with their board's policy goals. So he didn't really offer a hard and fast that this is why. It's just that there's more roads than we can get to in a year, and they had reasons to do the other ones. So hopefully this one being on the list for 2 years, or hopefully, the coming years we'll get her done.
Thank you.
Any other discussions? Say none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Brian, managers report.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, board members. A few things tonight. They began work on the Nixon Road and M43 traffic signal. So that project is a MDOT project to modernize that signal and put in some ADA ramps and crossings there. So I know we have had a couple calls on that, but that is strictly an MDOT project. Speaking of the road commission, they do have their annual meeting coming up Monday, February 21st. If anybody's interested in attending that. You may have seen on our Facebook page, Tri-County Regional Planning is asking for put out their traffic or transportation improvement plan 2022 through 2026 for public comment. So that's always usually a 3-year plan for transportation projects in the region. Of note, we're able to get 2 projects in there. If you remember the last tip through 2023, we were pretty successful with, I believe we had 5 or 6 projects in there. Did not have a lot of corresponding road projects coming up this year in the transportation for the TIP plan, but we were able to secure some extra funds for the Nixon Road widening, which was already in the TIP to do a project similar that we did on Mount Hope near Mount Hope Park. So widening, adding bike lanes, that type of thing. So we were able to secure extra funds for Nixon Road. We also did receive some CMAQ funds for a pathway that will connect to the Michigan or connect to the pathway in front of Waverly School, go up to Ivan and over to Mall Drive. So that's $635,000 for that pathway. So that helps serve the east side and some connections. If we're able to do the St. Joe pathway, that will ultimately connect into the Waverly pathway. So that was a good thing to get. That's a very competitive program to get CMAQ funds or TAP funds at the local level. There's not a lot to go around, and without a corresponding road project, it's very difficult to get those funds. So anyways, that plan is out for public comment till February 15th. I was speaking to auto owners today. They offered up a tour of their new headquarters for board members for anyone interested. So if you are, again, that's a kind of a jewel. It gets forgotten about a little bit with all of our other projects going on, but that's close to $100 million of investment, 236,000 square foot building. So offered up a tour. So I will get a date and pass on the invitation to all of you to go through there. One piece of good news, we've had some We've had some anxiety about our bids lately. So we did have one good bid. Rick put out the vac truck. We did get 4 out of the 5 companies bid on that. And we had budgeted $480,000. So the range was $459 to $490. So it's nice to have a bid that comes in a little bit according to plan. So still a 260-ish day minimum to build the truck. So that's still a ways out, but it was nice to have that bid.
Can we hope Rick to get our bids for the wastewater treatment plant to come in within range too?
Yeah, we're hoping. Speaking about the good segue. So we did have our pre-bid meeting. Over 60 people attended for the water resources recovery facility. Based on those in attendance, we think we'll have maybe 6 to 8 potential general contractors to bid. We did have a couple who dropped out, indicating the level of competition on the project. So hopefully that leads to a little better pricing, that they didn't feel that they could beat out some of the contractors who were bidding on it. Bidders did express some concerns with rising and volatile material pricing and supply chain issues. We did offer up a tour of the plant after that and have kept that open for inspection up until the bid date. So bids are due on February 24th. And we've been putting together contract amendments with our construction engineering consultants for construction. So we'll see. I know we have met with the engineers for some potential modifications to the design that may help with the bidding, including some extra time, not keeping it to 2 years, but allowing a little extra time in hopes that will help with those bids. Last but not least, I don't know if anybody saw it, but given it's Black History Month, there was a nice article in the Lansing State Journal about new Black-owned businesses that are thriving. And 3 of them, or actually 4 of them, well, 3 of them are located in Delta and another one operates quite a bit out of Delta. So that was nice to see. I know Colin's been working hard with a lot of these businesses. And it's great to have some success with women and minority owned businesses. Most of these all did go through the One and All program through LEAP as well. So that was nice to see. So that's all I have, but happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Brian? Thanks, Brian. We move to the committee of the whole. We have the annual report for the assessing department. Ted, do you want to come on up? Oh. Did you have an update you wanted to give Brian on general?
I do have a short presentation, but we can let Ted go first if you'd like.
Go ahead.
All right.
Ted, they're saying general orders is more important than you. What's going on?
I don't know about that. I'd like to see it.
I just wanted to give a quick update on the GM battery facility. So a lot of work went into this in January to leading up to the final announcement. So just wanted to kind of bring this back to the board. This, of course, most of the public information and stuff that you all know, the LG Energy Ultium facility, $2.6 billion investment, 1,700 jobs. They want to be operational by the end of 2024. Most of you are familiar where it's going. If you can see my cursor, be on the west side of the current GM facility. This is where we get into the infrastructure side of things. So this is where it's been a bit of a moving target, but an extraordinary demand on our system. So As it stands right now, and we're just starting to engage with their engineers and that type of thing. I believe Rick and Ernie have a kickoff meeting on Wednesday to start drilling down on some of these. But the big thing you can see here, water system demand 1.5 to 1.7 million gallons a day. The rest of these are just some of the other demands, which are, higher than what our normal system pressure and that type of thing is. And then the sanitary sewage flow discharge from the plant per day estimated to be at 525,000 gallons a day. So as you move down here, you see in 2021, our average daily usage was 3.38 million gallons a day. So 1.7 represents, you're getting up close to 50% of our daily use. And then a big chunk of our wastewater as well. So this, as I mentioned, I'll get to the infrastructure money we're receiving from the state, but I really wanted to take some time to point this out. We've done a lot of work over the last 4, 5, 6 years and really appreciate the support of the board. I know 5 or 6 years ago, the board mentioned infrastructure as a critical strategic initiative. And so we've done a critical amount of work by our engineering utility departments, and having that level of sophisticated understanding of our system really wouldn't have been possible without the support and some of the projects that we've done, which I have a list of those. So to try to piece that together for you, we really would not have been prepared to respond to this on such a short time period without this understanding of our system and the improvements that we've done. So I won't belabor these, but just, as you paint a picture, because I know most of these things are not really sexy projects. They're not things that get a lot of fanfare. But when we land a project like this and the amount of funds from the state that we received, 33 million, and the amount of work that you see goes into it, it can't be done without these pieces that we had moving forward. So it started really, and these are really just the major ones. These don't even count a lot of the smaller projects we had. But 2016, we started engaging with the Board of Water and Light for hydraulic modeling, which means really looking at the flow of water in our system, fire flows, that type of thing, learning where our weak spots are. 2017, we completed the water reliability study, which is really kind of a strategic plan for our water distribution system, a 10-year plan of projects, that type of thing. 2018, we began our wastewater master planning, which was a significant effort leading into determining that we really had to do a complete reconstruction of our wastewater plant. 2019, we engaged with OHM to begin sanitary system modeling, understanding our flows, where the flows are coming from in parts of the township. 2019, we did assessment of the Carrier Creek Interceptor, which is a really critical, probably one of our most critical pieces to our wastewater collection system. It's about a 5-mile sanitary sewer main that takes in GM, auto owners, Meyer, the state secondary complex, all of those. We completed the basis of design for the state revolving loan fund for the wastewater recovery or the water resources recovery facility. Completed the study for the Southern Emergency Connection in our water system, which could potentially play into how we serve the GM. That also allowed us to eliminate our wells, and then the independent utility rate study. And then we completed the design for the Carrier Creek Interceptor repair. So I know many of these are review for the board, but all these kind of played into the full picture and putting together in short notice these projected water and sanitary sewer system upgrades for GM. I have estimates in red. This is still kind of a moving target. As I mentioned, these are, given what we know with our system, these are things that at this point we think we need to do. This may change as we meet with them and get additional information, or we optimize and engineer the best solutions, with which Ernie and Rick have been putting in a lot of time and effort and thought into these. But just real quick, GM booster station, this is an existing booster station that helps push water to the existing GM plant. That's aging and needs work, and we will need to utilize that for the new plant as well. So that will need to be upgraded. Water distribution improvements. This will probably include an additional booster station, along with some water main work, potentially another water main across underneath the freeway out there. Just different ways to get water to the new plant in the quantity and quality and pressure that they need. Sanitary sewer lift station upgrades. They currently have a lift station out there at the GM plant, so we'll need to upgrade that to serve the new plant. We will likely need an equalization basin out there, which would help equalize the flows coming out of both plants going into Carrier Creek. That'll prevent us from having to upsize the entire Carrier Creek. Sure.
Sorry, just kind of a quick clarification. What do you mean by equalization?
Basin.
Well, yeah.
It's equalization is a large tank, and probably Rick
Tank,
the better,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, just as what Brian mentioned, basically, you build a tank that you can store water over a 24-hour basis, and we can pump the highs and lows so you can pump at a constant rate. So basically, you'd have your actual lift station that has the pumps in it. Then you'd have another basin that would have storage capability along with pumps.
It's a holding tank.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. And if you have other technical issues, I wanted to go through it quickly, but Ernie and Rick are much more able to talk about the technical side than I am. Carrier Creek interceptor sewer repairs. This, we knew we had to do some of this anyways, but obviously the urgency now is a lot quicker with these additional flows coming. The interceptor rehabilitation, as I mentioned, we have 5 miles of Carrier Creek interceptor. Being able to do some lining and rehabilitation will help preserve that line and give us reliability to handle those flows. Wastewater treatment plant additional capacity. This is what we estimate roughly the additional capacity that this plant this is a percentage of the capacity that this new plant is taken up of our additional capacity for the new water resources recovery.
And quickly on that,
facility.
Brian, does that require any design changes?
Not at this time, no.
Okay.
No.
I have a question. Excuse me. So you mentioned funding from the state. Will some of the funding from the state defray some of these costs, or is this going to be all on the township?
We received $33 million from the state, which I will get to. This is basically what fed our estimates to the state funds. And then land acquisition and site studies, we will need some land acquisition for Carrier Creek repairs and potentially a new booster station site. And we'll have some site studies to do there. So I mentioned those are the estimates that led to putting together, and when this started probably in December, which thankfully we were asked what it would take to serve this facility, to start putting together figures. We started, I believe it was roughly around 12 million. And as more and more information came to us about what their demands would be, it grew to 33 million. So feel very fortunate that LEAP really advocated for us. It was helpful to have Board of Water and Light in the same boat for a lot of their infrastructure improvements. They received roughly the same amount. But the MEDC and the Michigan Strategic Fund authorized it through the Strategic Site Readiness grant. That grant, I'm not sure it's going to be administered through LEAP. We're still waiting to hear how that grant's actually going to work. So we'll be having some meetings with LEAP and the Board of Water and Light in the next couple weeks as they understand it. But we've started moving ahead already with some of the system modeling and design, utilizing some of the engineering firms that are familiar with our system, OHM, who's done a lot of our wastewater modeling, and Tetra Tech, who has done a lot of our water stuff and is also doing the design on the Carrier Creek interceptor, and of course our wastewater plant. So we'll have a lot of staff time dedicated to the projects. As I said, we're engaging with Altium and our consultants, and so most of these projects, we've talked about some of the priorities. On the water side, we definitely have priority on some of those, because we have to do the upgrades to the system in order to get them the pressure and that type of thing. But most of these are going to have to be developed in parallel efforts. So I guess the one message I have is, again, I feel very fortunate that we were able to secure that funding. But if you take each of these lines and you look at some of the projects that we've done already, or that list of projects that we've done over the last 5 or 6 years, each of these represents a significant major infrastructure project. So this is going to be a really heavy lift for our staff over the next 2 years. Very short timeline, and developing all of these together along with the projects that we have going on at the wastewater plant. So I think we're up to it, but again, I think this will consume a lot of oxygen for a lot of our departments, and doing these, it's certainly worth it for a new battery facility. But I know we hadn't had a chance to discuss many of the infrastructure things in the past, so I just wanted to kind of give that basic rundown, and I'm happy to answer any questions, or as I said, Rick and Ernie are here, can also help with the technical side of things.
Okay, Andrea and then Dennis.
I know you were talking about some of, all this work happening in parallel. The goal is to have the battery plant operational by the end of 24. So short timeline, you're identifying some of the higher priority projects that will be critical for the plant's operation. Can you, are there any concerns about the timeline? And I know you said you thought we could get this done, but I'm assuming staff are starting to kind of map this out, where we need to be on different projects and different phases of those projects. And I'm assuming we'll probably get updates along the way, because there's a lot going on. But are there any areas of particular concern or focus, just given the short timeline, the significance of and then the importance of those improvements?
Sure, yeah, it's definitely a heavy lift, but we're trying to hit the ground running, utilizing some of our existing relationships with engineering consultants that we know have the staffing capability and expertise and familiarity, so that's gonna help. I've kind of roughed out kind of a global schedule, if you will, of, probably a 2 to 3 month period here this winter, early spring, where we're really starting to dial in these conceptual solutions and making sure, like Brian said, that we optimize those solutions so it's the right solution at the right cost and the right time frame to do what we need to do. And so that's going to be probably a 2 to 3 month period. And then we immediately need to get into design. And with the idea being we spend the rest of 2022 designing, getting plans and specs pulled together so that this time next year, if not a little before, we've got bid packages on the street for 3-4 projects that are going to hit all at once. And so that kind of sets us up for a start of construction spring of 23. And I think most, if not all of these can be done probably, in a 9 to 12 month period. And so that gets us done, say end of 23, early 24. So I actually feel like we have probably a little bit of float time in that schedule if they're not going to be operational till 24, but this is a moving target. So until we really pin down their needs, and it's not like we can't serve them at all today. We can, just not at the levels that they want. So if they take some time to ramp up, we'll be able to give them service. But when they want to be fully production, that's on the water side especially, we need to have that extra capacity. So it's tight, and there's a lot beyond our control right now with other competing projects for labor and materials and supply chains. And we're just hopeful that a lot of that kind of cures itself in the next, say, 12 months. But I think it's doable, and I definitely think we're up for it. But it's going to take a lot of effort, and that your support, Brian's support, and all of our consultants, we're going to have to really dig in and get it done. So hope that answers your question.
Glad to hear that.
Was there any inclusion for administrative overhead in any of that 33 million that we're going to get from the state?
I mean, we included some design costs and that type of thing. I mean, you mean in terms of staff, Dennis?
Well,
we did have
maybe
some-
not direct staff, but maybe, through contracting or whatever. I'm not sure, but I just can't believe it'd be $33 million. And so just do it with existing, personnel resources on this accelerated timeframe. Because we were never, equipped to deal with it like that.
Right.
And I just wondered if anything was built in.
Well, my estimates included, I figured out what I thought the construction would cost. I put in a 30% contingency for unknowns.
Okay.
Supply chain and high bids and
Right.
things that are going to change. And then I added 15% for engineering / kind of management of these projects. So a lot of that money is will be earmarked to pay our consultants within that chunk of money to, which is really that's the heaviest lift. I think, we're certainly going to have internal staff time managing a project, just keeping things rolling. But I feel like our engineering is at least covered within that pot of money. And then, if we can optimize designs and, the market gets maybe a little better, or at least not so continually escalating at such a high rate, then, maybe we'll have a little buffer. But again, these are moving targets. They were giving us very little information and very little time to react. And so, we're going to, as we study this over the next 2 to 3 month period, hopefully we can dial all this.
Well, hopefully those contingency set asides aren't going to get eaten up by inflation, but thanks for the info.
Is there anything that you need from our board in terms of staffing, internal staffing? Anything that we can do that you see on the horizon that we should be aware of to make sure that we've got staff? I know you're going to hire consultants, but what about staff on hand as well? Anything in that future?
That's well, we have certain staffing demands right now that we have to meet in some other departments as far as these projects go. That'll be, I guess, remain to be seen to this point. As Ernie said, a lot of this, we'll utilize consultants, which is not devoid of a lot of time, spent on staff, because it takes a lot to manage a lot of these different projects. Ernie does have 2 retirements coming up in his department, so we'll be replacing those.
And that's my concern too, and
so
succession planning for retirements, and that was gonna be my question for Ted as well about the assessing department, and what we can do as a board to support our staff members and make sure that you have all the hands that you need. So not that you have an answer right here necessarily, but just to say I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, we appreciate it, and as our needs arise, we'll definitely are becoming a little bit more adept at analyzing those needs. So.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, great. Well, thank you for that update, Brian. We appreciate that. Ted, you're up. All right.
Are any of these yours? Yep. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, board members. I appreciate your time in allowing me to give the 2021 assessing report. Alana, you're going to do my clicking?
I'm working on it.
Oh, Brian is okay.
Gotta switch back over.
Yep, fine. What you're going to see is probably pretty familiar, what you've seen several other years too, but it's a lot of stats and graphs and things like that, but it kind of tells the picture. So next one down, Brian. So the first slide represents the total assessed value by property class. So Delta Township currently has an assessed value of about $1.8 billion. And this shows by the various property classifications how that 1.8 billion is carved up. So as you'll see, about 56% of the value comes from the residential class, industrial 6%, commercial 27%. Personal still accounts for about 10% of our value, which is very good actually. And then the other 2 classes are somewhat nominal, but it's a good breakdown, diverse, if you will. It's a good makeup of value coming from various classifications, not dominant on one. The next slide represents by number of parcels. So we currently have 13,444 parcels. And where do they come from? As you can see, about 80% of them are residential properties. Okay. About 10% are personal property, 4%, about 5% are commercial, and 1% industrial. So again, just to give you a graphical representation of where the parcels come from. Next slide is history. So this shows the last 30 years or so what our taxable value has done since 1992. So you can see it's gone from $600 million to about 1.6 million. This is taxable, not assessed. So that's why it's a little bit lower than the 1.8 we saw a little earlier. So again, just kind of history for you to see what it's done, when it's gone up, when it's gone down, and by how much. Next slide is basically the same thing, other than it puts it in a little bit different of a chart to hopefully allow you to see the gains, the dips, and the gains again. So as you can see in 2000 or so, I mean, that's my starting point. Over the next 8 years, obviously it grew when times were great, and then the bad times hit for 4 or 5 years and we dipped again. And now we're back on the upward trend over the last several years. So again, this just gives you an idea of where it was and what it's done. And as I was gonna say, feel free to stop me as I go if you have any questions along the way too. Keep it somewhat informal and just let me know. Next slide is a snippet of our top 20 taxpayers. So as you can see, it grows each year, by the way, of our getting some separation, but obviously Meyer and auto owners are by far our largest 2 taxpayers that we have here. And frankly, with their investment the last year has made the spread even more. So, and then you can see the other ones, but what you see mixed in here, honestly, are some not hotels, large apartment complexes, large box stores, see Cintas, so manufacturer, if you will, or that sort of thing, consumers energy. But again, a good cross section so you have an idea of who our largest taxpayers are.
Ted, sorry. I'm just shocked at Norplus being more than General Motors.
Well, keep in mind, General Motors is
425.
Yep, 425,
you.
exactly. So we don't have a lot other than the parts warehouse, which is true GM.
Okay.
The other
thank
stuff
you.
is a big deal, but it's assessed by Lansing and reported by Lansing, so it is not in these totals, correct? Yep.
Hey, Ted, so putting on your great Karnak hat, where would you think that Amazon will fall into this chart once it's up and running?
It will be at least third, at least third on the list. So it's going to be somewhere. Okay, I'm going to say third.
Okay.
I'm just going to put it there. Yeah.
I'll take it.
I haven't had a lot of time to think about it, but
That's
somewhere in
great.
there, it's going to be, it'll be a big
third
one.
third. Yeah.
But yeah. Mhm.
Plus or minus a third.
Yeah. What, I was going to add something else on that too. Darn it. Maybe it'll hit me, but anyways, that's that. Next chart represents, it's just a quick comparison. So showing you our values compared to the county in total. So this is just Delta Township and taking every other municipality in totaling them up just to see where we fall in relation to everybody else. So, and I did it by property class again. So starting on the top line, you'll see the commercial class. We have about $480 million of value, and there's a total of 750 in the county. So 64% of the commercial value is here in Delta. And frankly, next year, this is going to be a big change. We're going to grow a lot, obviously, with Delta Crossing, and Amazon technically will hit a commercial class, not industrial. So this will be a big separator too. It's going to, don't know where it's going to be, Dennis, but it's going to be 70 probably, or third. Yeah, it'll be third. And again, then just by all the other classifications, but I won't go through each one, but you can see industrial, we make up about 44% of the entire county. A third of the residential is here. 60% of the personal property is here. And that's because we have a lot of businesses. So again, you can just see our relationship to all the value in the county.
And again, this does not include the GN 425.
Correct. None of these would include the 425 stuff. Yep, exactly. In the new facility, the new battery plant will never be part of these numbers either, because it'll be in Lansing's numbers.
Yeah, you might want to footnote that.
I will. Yep.
Yeah.
Next slide, and there's several of them here, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them, but this is just something for you to have. But so this is just saying in 2021, we've collected about $72.5 million of taxes. So the treasurer's office, we do the assessing side, send the numbers over to Courtney's department, and they do the collection of about $72.5 million. And this just shows by taxing authorities, where all of the dollars went. So again, I won't go through each one, but you see the schools, the county, the township, obviously, state education tax is a biggie, and that sort of thing. But again, just something for you to refer back to if folks want to know where the tax dollars are going to. Same thing on the next page. It's just a different graphical way of showing you the numbers. And this one does, in aggregate, put them together. So Eaton County here, I put ISD and jail and roads and all that together on this one. So that's where you'll see Eaton County being 14 million, of a total. In deltas, I put the operating and library and such together. So again, this just shows where the $72.5 million is going to.
I have a question, if
Yes.
I may. I see that the Eaton County ISD and the Ingham County ISD in our township are, Ingham County is actually higher. So their borders must encompass more of a taxable value area.
Yeah, so Ingham ISD is Waverly School District. Yep, and Eaton ISD is everything else.
Yeah.
So it's just how, yeah, exactly. And so that would be how that is. That's interesting. Yeah. Their millage rate must be higher too, now that you say that.
Waverly's
So
is
I just,
one of the highest.
it's something I wasn't aware of until I see this on the graphics.
Yep, exactly.
They were one of the 16, remember when they Headley went through and there were,
Yeah, oh, yeah,
Waverly
absolutely.
is one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
There were 16 districts.
Yeah, and the next four is, well, same thing. I don't want to get redundant with this stuff, but this is just, again, something for you to have if you need to refer back to who are our taxing authorities, how many mills do they collect? How much do we give them each year after we do the collections and that sort of thing? So just a quick table, again, that shows where the 72.5 million goes. And then I also threw in the $1 million that we get from the drain office that we do the collections on behalf of the drain commissioner, forward them that money. And then the streetlights are another 670,000 that we do collecting as special assessments, if you will. Department activities. So what else have we done? There's just 3 of us now in the department, and we're doing good. We're pretty busy, which is a good thing. So during the year, we did a little over 2,200 inspections. Kind of lump these together, though. When I say inspections, these can be on site, these can be virtual, or Google Maps, Earth, all the other tools that we have. But we've touched and updated 2,224 records, which is quite a few. Along with that, we inspected, and all the building permits are on-site inspection. We don't do anything, street side, nothing. We go to the properties, measure the decks, measure the houses, do whatever we have to do, but those are all on site. So we did 717 of those. That includes new homes, additions to homes, build outs in commercial buildings, remodels, everything. So any permits that are pulled out of Matt's department, we do the follow-up after that. Along with that, there were 80 carryovers from last year. So we do our assessing as of December 31st every year. So if something's not quite done yet, we got to go back the following year. So, and then lastly, we only had 4 board review appointments last year at March board review. So that's our record low, which is an awesome thing. So we'll see if we can keep that trend going. Deeds and ownership transfers. So these are, it's just hard to describe how much work these are. And this is mostly what Jill does. She does other things, but this consumes a lot of time. So anytime a deed makes a trip to the Register of Deeds office in Eaton County, we get a copy of that. So, and there were 1,262 of them last year. So every one of them that comes here requires us to do something. We are the keeper of the master database, if you will. So everybody gets names, addresses, legals, and all that from our department. So we're the keeper of that. And each one of those records or deeds as they get recorded requires us to do something on our end.
Does that include the county as well? Do they rely on your database?
Yes, absolutely. Actually, they read our database live. So when you buy a property and I enter their sale, it immediately updates their database in real time. Yep. So along with that, there were 1,262 total. Of those, 730 were warranty deeds. And kind of the difference is what's very common these days are quit claim deeds to just simple transfer of ownerships or add somebody. There's tons of ladybird deeds for the transfer upon death thing. Just very, very common now. So there's just a lot of, well, you can see by the numbers, 1,200, it's almost 1,300. That's the most we've had in, well, probably ever. So anyway, my point is with those, it's a lot of work for her to track everything, and it's extremely important that it's done right. On the bottom, you'll see the residential property sales. So in 2021, using the county's sales study period, which isn't a calendar year, it's a little bit different, but anyways, there's 479 sales that affected our 2022 upcoming assessed values. And the average sale price of those was $216,500. So just an interesting statistic, and you can see over the last 5 or 6 years what the average has been, and not surprising to anybody, but it's trending upward right now. Next slide represents the average sale price in the 4 different school districts that we have. Now, this is a calendar year one. So again, you can read it, but Grand Ledge, 329 sales, average sale price 262. Waverly, Holt is a little shocking at 444,000 per sale on an average, but there's only 4 sales, and one of them was like $900,000. So it tends to skew these stats a little bit. So nothing
Must have been sold.
Yeah. And then Lansing, 14 sales, average 343. That's largely the Saratoga Farms area, which does extremely well, by the way. Sells very well up there. So that's kind of there's a lot of new construction up there as well. Next slide, Michigan Tax Tribunal cases. This is largely me handling these. Brian does help some. We did have 21 cases filed in 2021. We've so far settled 10. I have 11 pending. Significant as the Walmart, obviously it's been in abeyance for 3 years now. And the St. Joe one is actually at the Supreme Court waiting for the 4th decision on that one. So
That's the Boji.
yeah. So we
Did they-
won at every level. Now it's at the Supreme Court and not sure when that'll be heard, but 6 months maybe. Who
So
knows?
they agreed to hear that. They don't have to.
Well, it's a good point. I guess I'm just assuming they're going to. I know they're attempting to. How about that? I
Right.
don't know if they've accepted it
Oh,
yet.
that's why I wanted to
Yep,
know if they
yep.
had accepted it.
So Ted, what's the rationale for all these hotels?
That's what I was just going to bring up. As you can see on the right-hand side is the flurry last year, and it all stems from tax reps. I mean, they contact all the hotels and say, hey, we know you've had a bad couple of years due to COVID. Your numbers are way down. Now would be a great time to maybe get your property taxes reduced. Guaranteed that's where it starts.
Are these their corporate legal counsels or is this?
Every time. Every time.
Okay.
Yep, it's not their local attorney that handles their paperwork for whatever.
Yeah.
It's a tax rep, if you will. And they do them on contingency, so there's no loss to a Hampton, to a Hilton. They say, if we save you a buck, we get half, you get half, and we won't send you a bill if we lose.
But if I can, I mean, as a resident and, I'm laid off, my property taxes don't go down. And that's not necessarily a valid argument to lower your property taxes because, you had an intermittent loss of income.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, the thing is, now, I have, from all these folks, for the most part, I've seen their financials over the last 2 years. And if I compare the last 2 years to the 2 years before that,
yeah,
it's horrible. I mean, they've definitely taken a huge hit. The $1 million question is, has it recovered? Will it recover? And if it does, to what extent?
Right.
And if you're going to buy one of these, are you going to pay less because you don't know for sure? Of course, that's their argument, right? Is there's this unknown. So I don't know where it'll end up. A couple of them, I'm very close to getting them to drop. So we're doing all right. None of them scare me too much. These are not ones where we're going to have to revise budgets and things like that. I mean, I really believe half of them will drop after we get down to the, discovery process and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, okay.
Because I think they've rebounded pretty decent so far.
I think so. All right.
So, yep.
Thank you. Interesting.
Next slide is internet services. So as you know, we have our assessing, almost all of our data online, 24/7, 365. So anybody in the world can look up data whenever they need to. So this is good for all parties because they get access to the data whenever they need it. It's complete. It's basically my whole database is out there as an open book, and you can search by name, address, parcel number, and pretty much everything's there that's in my database. So it's very helpful. These get a little redundant and maybe whatever, but so personal property. The first one has to do with being a small taxpayer. So a small taxpayer is classified as I am a business and my business assets, nothing to do with the business, but the personal property, meaning chairs, desks, computers, widgets, whatever, are worth $80,000 or less. If that's the case for me, I file a form 5076 with my local assessor and I am exempt from personal property taxes. I pay none. So we frankly lost half of our personal property taxpayers due to this legislation 5-6 years ago, probably. So this is just to give you an idea of, how and why the tax base reduces in personal properties because exemptions such as a 5076. One thing I want to point out is, so these numbers are for 2021. 2022, nothing has changed. So 80,000 and less. The biggest thing is beginning in 2023, that number goes to 180,000. So we're going to lose another 229 parcels now. On top of the 757 will become exempt in 2023 because a small taxpayer beginning then, the threshold is higher. So we'll have to expect I've calculated about $18 million of taxable value loss due to that additional legislation. Yes.
So I know what that legislation, the legislature appropriated money to reimburse locals. And I know Delta already, the way the personal property tax reforms were structured, we don't get any reimbursement. Does that change at all with this?
Great question. And I don't think it's gotten that far. If it has, they haven't told us what that is. But yes, I hope it's not like last time where they did it was kind of, you're probably familiar, they did a base year and we've grown a lot since then because of all of our growth. So they're like, oh, you don't qualify. But we still lost tons of revenue when that happened. It's just our growth offset our losses, if you will.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
But I don't know, Brian, have you been in that at all? Or I have not heard.
I have, I honestly, off the top of my head,
Yeah.
can't remember.
Okay. So we can hope.
So Ted, if we have 757 exempted properties and it's costing us $131,000, I know they're not all valued the same, but if they were, it really wouldn't amount to very much per individual business, about 100, less than $200. But I know there's different valuations of their personal property, but.
So my next slide, I think, is where you're going. So as an example, the 757 parcels, if I put it against, well, what I get is, and it's a guess because I don't know what they have because they don't report any values. I'm just saying,
Right.
if they were worth $25,000 taxable value, yeah, we lose 131,000.
Yeah.
The township does.
Right.
Correct. Yep. Exactly right. So next year with the next threshold, that'll probably just about double, I'm guessing, something like that. Because that's going to take, they're higher value properties, obviously, because it's between 80 and 180 now. So it's more taxes that we'll be losing. Yep. So again, we lose 131 there. And then for everybody, if I do the same calculation with all taxing authorities, so the schools, whoever, county and such, then that goes up to $826,000 of lost revenue due to a small business exemption. Next one is another exemption, and it's called the eligible manufacturing personal property exemption, or EMPP. What those are manufacturers, so they have to make something, and we have 24 of these businesses in Delta that qualify for a EMPP. So the process is a little bit different. They file a personal property statement with me. I process the numbers, put it in a database, of course. The only thing is, then I transfer it to the state because the state does the collection. They're exempt locally. We get nothing, and the state collects the dollars through what's called an ESA, or an essential services assessment. So again, it's a different way of assessing industrial manufacturers where on their personal property where their taxes are sent to the state versus the local municipality that they reside in. So of the 24, and I can calculate a pretty good number on that reduces the collections at the township. So actual township taxes of about 346,000. And the next page would be the same 24 taxpayers with all the millages. So the total tax roll took a hit of about 1.9 million of, again, taxes we don't collect here, but go to the state instead. It would, however, I'm not sure what millage rate they use or how they do their thing necessarily, but it's less.
But Ted, if I may ask, is on these personal property exemptions, that's continual, but if they were taxed and they weren't exempt, they depreciate anyway and eventually go down to zero.
If they buy no new assets, absolutely.
Right.
I mean, well, I shouldn't say they go to zero. They go to a bottom line till they are disposed of, but it levels out at, say, 80% of it would go
They
away.
go for like,
Whatever
the term is.
Point taken. Yes, it reduces every year if they don't buy new stuff.
Down to a floor.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Next slide, disabled vet exemptions. So this has been around for, it might be about 10 years now already, or 7 maybe. But if I'm a disabled vet and I'm permanently and totally disabled due to a service-connected disability, you file with my department, and it's just a simple form and a summary of benefit letter that you get from the VA every year that verifies that. And then you are exempted from local property taxes. So we currently have 79 disabled vets that qualify for this program in Delta. And next slide would represent about $47,500 of lost revenue to the township. Shouldn't say lost revenue, but revenue we didn't get. And all taxing authorities would be $264,000 that's removed from the tax roll for those exemptions. Next slide, just real quick. I throw this one in there every year just to show new houses because it's kind of interesting. And you can see we had 54 new builds this year, or at least permits that were pulled. And the green blobs or whatever light blue on the screen shows where they are. So real quick, so we had 54 this year, 27 prior, 4250. So actually, obviously, a pretty good year. One thing I'd point out, again, you can see where they're at, and this is I'm quite sure the first time we've had so many on the east side of the highway, and specifically Saratoga has quite a few, so that's all the way northeast, and then there were several or quite a few in Canyon Hills as well, and then Oak Park had some too, so maybe Oak Park more than Canyon, but anyway, some good growth in Waverly, some good stuff in Lansing, and then several in Grand Ledge again. Next slide, just a real quick example of some of what the new houses look like, stuff that we visit, measure, list, put on the tax roll. Next one shows a few examples of the large commercial industrial ones that we've added this year or are in process of adding. Amazon obviously is the top one there that's just getting started, so there wasn't much to assess there, but a steel frame under construction. Next one on the right is Meyer Warehouse Edition on their largest warehouse. Lower left, obviously, is Auto Owners coming on, which did come on for a full value for 2022. And then lower one is Delta Crossing, of course, which is just getting started as well. Preliminary information for 2022. Based on sales studies and county studies and things like that, the residential class should be increasing 7.7% or so. So pretty good number there. Commercial is up a lot with 9%. And again, a lot of that has to do with new construction. I mean, the sales are definitely up, but not to show that kind of gain quite yet. But when you factor in the new construction, it boosts it to a pretty good number there. Industrial also up 7.7%. Taxable value, go to the bottom first with the inflation rate multiplier. It shows you the last 7-8 years of the CPI, what I call it, what we've raised taxable values. So, kind of around 2% or less and that sort of thing. This year's CPI is 3.3%. So by far, I believe the largest we've ever had since proposal, or if not the largest, close. So what that tells all of us is our taxable values, even if we did nothing new to our house, didn't change a thing, our taxable value will increase 3.3%. Okay. So on top of that, with all of our new growth and uncappings, so when I buy a house in 2021, it gets uncapped for 2022. I have taxable value growth there. I have a 3.3% growth of taxable value due to the CPI. And then frankly, lots of new construction and expensive new construction. So overall, we expect our taxable value to grow 7.7% over 2021. So it's pretty high. Just to close here, 2022 assessment notices are going to go out in the next 2 weeks or so. So this is our opportunity to notify all taxpayers of what we propose their 2022 value to be, and then obviously give them appeal dates when we're going to be here to hear their appeals and that sort of thing. So that's all going to happen in the next couple of weeks or so. So if you get questions, please forward them to my department and we'll take care of them. Board review is scheduled for March 14th and 15th. We stick with a day session from 9 to 5 and then an afternoon evening session on the Tuesday from 1 to 9. So, and then obviously we would expand that if we ever needed to, because anybody that wants to be heard, needs to be heard, is going to get a time slot to come in and get heard. So it's been extremely slow the last several years. I expect it to be busier this year, but still not something that we can't handle in 2 days. So that's what we're shooting for. So that's my report, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Great. Other additional questions? Well, good job.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
Informative and interesting, Ted. Thank you. Any other comments from the board on anything?
I have a question. In regard to the second public comment earlier about the road commission, what should we as individuals or as a board, what should we do to interface with the road commission and present the residents' concerns?
Brian, you want to talk about communication with the road commission?
Sure. We, as a staff, we communicate quite a bit. And given the amount of snow we had, that's not an uncommon complaint we get, especially in neighborhoods, of how quickly it gets cleared. We're happy to continue to interface with them. I
Okay.
did mention the road commission has their annual meeting coming up February 21st.
It's a board meeting night again. I hope that
Oh,
you
that's good.
share our displeasure. I've shared it the last 2 years because they just started this Monday stuff the last couple of years.
I will share that. I did not catch that, so thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, it's been that way. This is the 3rd year in a row.
So I guess that's not an option, but we're happy to pass it along, certainly, if any board members would like to interact.
Well, I don't want to make more work for staff, but I want to make sure that, the road commission is hearing from us on behalf of our residents, just to make sure that we are doing our due diligence. So, okay, thank you.
And in the past, I've had lots of conversations with Blair on it. Their policy is when the storm's going on, they're keeping the main roads open.
Yeah.
And then once the snow actually stops, then they work out from, the biggest, most traveled roads down until they get to the neighborhood. So I think most neighborhoods were cleared out by, I think a lot of places by Saturday were all cleared out, which the storm stopped on Thursday and they're cleared. So that's relatively quick.
Yeah, I think part of the problem with this storm, obviously, it was a lot of snow, but I know in my neighborhood, and it's not uncommon, we get plowed very late. And so, they come through, but a lot of the snow had packed down.
Yeah.
Then it was loosening up after they plowed. It's still, if you have a car, I don't know how cars would get through our neighborhood. There, it is that bad. I have all-wheel drive, I can, but so I can imagine in a lot of these neighborhoods, one plow through, especially when it's days, because I didn't get plowed till Friday. And that was fairly early. Sometimes we're like 4 days after the snow hits is when they get plowed. So it just was a lot of snow that got packed down from people driving through. The plows come through, but there's still so much there, and then it's breaking up with the traffic, and it's just a mess to try and navigate. So it really needs, I know our neighborhood certainly needs another plow through. I imagine a lot of these roads once was not sufficient.
And Brian, that may be something that can be communicated, just finding out, are they coming back through now that they did the initial, or are they considering this done?
And they just might be surprised, like the condition now since they plowed, so.
Yeah.
It was a lot of snow. Maybe every snow it doesn't require that, but this time.
Yeah. There might also have been issues of cars on the street and that sort of thing too.
My neighborhood, I'll say again, had several cars parked overnight, even though the township put a request out reminding people not to park because the snow was coming, but they do anyway.
Yeah. So lots of variables.
And when you go around them, then you just leave all that other snow. They don't have a choice. And they've got to go far enough around not to clip the car. So you're talking about half the street that's not got a plow.
Yeah, we don't have that issue, but I understand that's a huge problem.
Should get a citation.
I'll leave it alone. I've already poked the bear enough.
We give you the book.
Any
I'm
final
going to be
public-
meeting with Tom about that.
Any final public comment? See that's coming for us, and seeing no further items on our agenda, we are adjourned.
No.